Did you know that passive fixed income ETFs only capture about 50% of the U.S. public bond market? But with JP Morgan Asset Management's active fixed income ETFs, we can help you capture 100% of the U.S. public bond market and explore twice as many opportunities. Visit jpmorgan.com/getactive to learn more. JP Morgan Asset Management is the brand name for the asset management business of JP Morgan Chase & Company and its affiliates worldwide. This communication is issued by JP Morgan Distribution Services Incorporated, member of FINRA.
Having the right people in your corner for life's biggest milestones makes all the difference. Like a friend who's there when you're house hunting or checking out a new ride, State Farm is there too, helping you choose the coverage you need. With a State Farm agent, you know someone is there to help you along the way. And with so many coverage options, it's nice knowing you have help choosing a plan that fits your needs, so you can continue celebrating all of life's milestones. Head to statefarm.com to get a quote. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Avoiding your unfinished home projects because you're not sure where to start? Thumbtack knows homes, so you don't have to. Don't know the difference between matte paint finish and satin? Or what that clunking sound from your dryer is? With Thumbtack, you don't have to be a home pro. You just have to hire one. You can hire top-rated pros, see price estimates, and read reviews, all on the app. Download today.
This series is sponsored by Books at One, a social enterprise dedicated to transforming bookshops into community hubs that promote literacy nationwide. Welcome to Aran Island This, a podcast series where we talk to Irish people from different walks of life as they reflect on their own journeys. Join me, Russell McDermott, as we explore the many aspects of Irishness and what it means to each of our guests through life's ups and downs. Paul Wallace, welcome to Aran Island This.
Good to be on with you, Russell.
Now, have you been there to the Aran Islands, and which one, or somewhere better or greater than there?
Oh, I was on to the big one quite a few years ago, a beautiful day, which, as you know, on the West Coast is fairly fantastic. Yeah, I've done a few of the islands there, Inishbofin as well, which was fantastic as well. But managed to have the weather and planned it well. My wife and their family are from Mayo, so not too far to travel from there.
Isn't the water amazingly clear and light blue out there? That's what fascinated me. It was like being in Bermuda.
Yeah, turquoise.
Turquoise.
It really is. It is fantastic. Mind you, a little bit chillier.
Slightly chillier.
I didn't swim in the Aran Islands, but I did in Inishboffin's beautiful beach, just about 100 metres or 200 metres up from the harbour, and it looked idyllic. It was about 26 degrees when I got in. It was cold, and I'd been swimming other parts on the Atlantic coast of the Irish Sea, but for some reason the current there, the Gulf Stream doesn't seem to get there. Maybe that's why it's so beautiful. But I haven't had a dip in the Aran Islands yet, but one to do, and another Cape Clear, being a Cork man, I love the harbour there as well.
The bias. And you swim regularly, Paul, yeah?
Yeah, I do, during the winter months, I might do a couple in around December for Christmas and any charity things. But then I tend to leave it go now till maybe April, May, and then I'll be back in till about September. I'm living in Monkstown in Dublin, so Sea Point is quite
it's very handy.
Tide, is it?
December 28th, I believe, is very warm.
Yeah. I think it's been a fairly mild winter. So when I got in, last time was around Christmas. I think, I was in on New Year's Day as well, down the Atlantic in Enniscrone. That was fairly cold, and we stayed in for a good while. I'm normally in the winter, it's a 30 to 60 second plunge, but we stayed in for about 10 minutes. So that was,
wow.
Mind you, after the first few minutes, I think it's numb dull feeling in your body.
You can feel nothing anyway.
But generally, I'm more of in the Irish waters, more of a summer swimmer.
Wise man. And if I met you in an elevator in some hotel in downtown, God knows where, and asked you what do you do, or how do you describe yourself, what would that sound like, Paul?
What do I do? That's very good. At the moment, I would say...
how do you see yourself? Are you a former rugby player, a pundit, a businessman, entrepreneur? What are you in your head?
I suppose I'm constantly in transition, adapting. I would have been rugby player, then former rugby player, stroke pundit, now moved on to, I suppose, businessman, family man, to 8-year-old twins. So a lot of family time being spent at my age, being late having them, the children, and work-wise as well. Just focused there, my own business, that's, co-owned. So driving that. So Yeah, not so much fun these days, all family and business. Well, lots of fun in both of those as well.
A family puts manners on you, trust me.
Yeah, it certainly does. Certainly does.
And was rugby always going to be your thing, Paul, you think?
Yeah, from an early age, sailing was probably the number one sport. Tennis as well. Growing up in Monkstown in Cork, a lot revolved around sailing. My dad was the Olympic manager for 3 Olympics and sailed internationally himself in a laser dinghy. And, we had a 30-foot boat, which we used to spend our summers down in West Cork on. So it was very much sailing, and then transitioned into rugby, I guess, where I was playing with Cork on. When I moved, my father moved work-wise to Limerick, went to Crescent, to rugby school, and it really sort of took off from there when I was sort of under 16, and I got into the senior team sort of a few years early. And then I suppose, got on to the becoming a rugby player, and not as much sailing, unfortunately, but I've been able to rectify that in recent years.
And rugby's in your family, your brothers, like your older brother played and your younger brother. So three of you played at a high level. The fourth made it club level. But it's obviously a drive in your house for rugby and sport and competition.
Yeah, 2 older brothers. So Henry and Richard played for Irish colleges, would have been first. And then I played for Irish schools in, 89. So I was about a year young for that. So I played a couple of years. So from that age, I think all of us were fully head down on the rugby side of things. David was 4 years younger than me again. So he was a little bit behind that curve till, he probably came into his own when I was over in London playing with my brother Richard. But having Richard ahead of me, again, another 4 years ahead in, those sort of national senior team setups and the training, etc. It was a great influence on me with regards to the sort of training and the work rate that was involved in a real transitional time when I remember turning up for my first Munster senior training session and up at the front doing laps, and the looks I was getting from some of the other forwards. Who is this young little student chap here now? Yeah. I could tell there was, you're not meant to be doing that, Sonny.
Who is this fella?
Yeah. But I suppose there was a start of that whole transition within Irish rugby at that stage. And my brother Richard was probably certainly the most professional in the Munster squad at that stage when it came to weight training, athletics, etc. So, and I think that sort of transitioned, and now you look at how professional every player is. But it was that they were the first tentative steps, I think, where it was nearly frowned upon to be too keen in the training stakes.
Willie Duggan wouldn't have liked that too much.
Yeah. I had a heater on the way up in World Cup. That's it.
And then, so with the whole change of the game, this thing called professionalism was coming as well. So you had an opportunity to go over to the UK, didn't you?
Yeah, and you know what? With the All-Ireland League at that stage, the fact that I'd come through the RFU systems from the age of 17, we trained as professionals. I was working in First National Building Society and Treasury. They gave me a lot of freedom as sponsors of Blackrock back then. But the training we would do we were almost professional, except doing a day job as well. So that transition was well underway. But in 1996, when the game was fully professional and I got offered a few contracts in the UK, it was at a completely different level in England, the Premiership there compared to Irish rugby. And to go over to a club like Saracens, where you had the great Philly Sella, Michael Lina, Richard Hill, Pienaar, the list goes on. Lucky to play like the Castanier Horn, etc. It was just, Bracken, there was the number of Galacticos at the club, but also had a real old school vibe about it, as was the poor man of English First Division rugby, and was always been relegated. Some fantastic characters there and we're still really, really close, the whole club, even from the generation before, generation after. There's a lot of badly informed bad press about the club over, especially in Ireland, I felt over the last while. But I tell you what, it is a fantastic club, and anyone who's ever gone there and played there has a real genuine affection for the club. Even if they played a number of clubs, Saracens is always very close, and the way they've looked after players, etc., has been a credit to them.
And where did you play in the games in those days?
Well, my first season we moved from Southgate, which was our training ground, which was a council pitch basically, and we moved to Enfield Football Club with a huge capacity of 3,000. So I remember playing against our first home game against Leicester Tigers, who had won the league. We beat them that day, and they were full of the infamous ABC club in the front row: Dean Richards, Martin Johnson, Neil Back, Joel Stransky at 10, there was all these superstars, and to be playing instead of in this little stadium. But the following year then we moved to Vicarage Road and shared the ground with Watford, and the following season we were very successful, won the cup, should have won the league. We lost out on, I think it was one league point. There was no playoffs back then, and which was quite difficult because a lot of players were in international duties and that, so it wasn't a true reflection, we thought, of the league. And when Newcastle won, I think we pipped Leicester then for third. It was quite competitive then, but at that stage we were beginning to start getting 20,000. So the fact that the club was able to grow so hugely, and a lot of the credit was down to Peter Deacon, who was the guy who created Super League. He was a real fantastic sports marketeer, and I think most of English clubs and then Northern European rugby marketing strategies have all come from what Peter Deacon was doing. He recreated the Bradford Bulls, Sale Sharks. He certainly did it for Saracens. Now you needed success on the pitch as well. Unfortunately, Peter died quite a few years ago. A wonderful man, and it just showed you where rugby could get to when from the amateur marketing to that professional slick marketing that he was doing.
Yeah, we tend to forget that now with the passage of time, of how, not backward, but where the game was then and what people did to make it so professional and appealing. Even moving to a soccer stadium like Vicarage Road, which I used to go and watch Watford play, tiny base,
Yeah, we were getting bigger crowds than Watford on occasion.
Yeah, Graham Taylor was a good friend of mine. I wouldn't want to say, he's gone now, I wouldn't want him to hear that.
Well, I tell you, we used to go to the Hornets to watch some of the games. Yeah. One of the best lines I ever heard was when Goran Eriksson was there, and the crowd started singing, "They'd rather have a turnip than a Swede," as Taylor's nickname was Turnip Head. So
that's right.
That is one of the wittiest lines I've heard at a football match.
Yeah, he came to my wedding in Mullingar. A turnip was served at the wedding, and he shouted at me, "Why do you serve turnip?" He's a lovely man, but I always remember Vicarage Road was a nice place, and you wear the funny hats, didn't you, in Saracens?
Yeah, the fez hat. It started with the kicking teeth coming on, all the music, the Men in Black. All these sort of things were completely novel to
which taken for granted now, yeah.
Yeah, all taken for granted, but there was so much, and all from Peter Deacon, I would have said, brought all that into rugby union and really drove it on. At one stage we had more people in the commercial department than we had players, because you had to create all your own money. There was no, as in the Irish system, where you've got the unions financing the players and etc. You're literally on your own there to create that. And what Nigel Ray and the other owners like Nick Leslow and that did, they were losing money. And as Nigel always said, all he ever wanted to do was make the club sustainable. It was never in it for a quick buck. There was a lot of very successful business people who went in thinking there would be quick buck to be made in professional rugby. All those guys pulled out after a year or two, realising that was not the case. To this day, I guess, financially, the English club system still finds it quite difficult to survive. I've just seen with the amount of liquidations of rugby clubs.
And salaries going up and costs going up,
Yeah, so not enough credit has been given to those benefactors that were there for the good of the game and the good of the clubs, and not looking for to see if they can make a profit on turning a club around, like we see in soccer so much these days.
Yeah. And for you, was becoming professional a mindset, a way of life? Was it harder to do, to be professional? You got paid, but you had to have a mindset to be working 24/7 at being professional, which wasn't natural. Even though you were training professionally, it's pressure, isn't it?
Well, funnily enough, I had sort of offers to go to Bristol, Newcastle, and I decided to go to Saracens to continue a banking career and to work in London. But I soon found out, as part of my contract, that I'd be able to work. And that first season, I was still playing European rugby with Leinster, back for Ireland games, and playing for Saracens as well, all at the same time. So there's 3 different teams on the go. So that banking career sort of had to be parked. But I loved it. The fact that you could just focus on rugby 24/7. And like the big thing is Philippe Sella, who's probably my hero in rugby. He was 36. He was just a class act back then, on and off the pitch. And Philippe, the most important thing, he never lifted a weight. He was a farmer for such a classy, elegant player. He was just so strong, but he never ever did weights, which was quite interesting. But his was all about rest. You had to have an hour's rest in the middle of the day in between sessions, and it taught you. Whereas Paddy Johns, who I recently had a conversation doing a rowing event with him, we were there at the same time, my brother Richard, Paddy, and myself, and he caught a virus. Overtraining caused a lot of us to break down because we were doing these Irish programs, still doing your Saracens training. And the thought was, you're a professional now, you should be training every moment of the day. But rest, the Sella way of rest and just focused training was what it was all about. I suppose that the hardest thing back then was the number of games we played. So we were never really able to have a good off season because you play 50 odd games a year. I remember playing France twice. I think I played a full game and 70 minutes, flying back and playing a half the next day against Wallace in a league game, at a very high level. You ask the guys to do that now, you didn't play 3 or 4 days later. And you'd regularly play a Saturday, you might fit in a Wednesday game and the following Saturday. It was fairly relentless. And even, we used to play on a Sunday and you'd arrive on a Monday, and most players would have played on a Saturday. And in Irish training sessions, it was a full-on a heavy session. So it was, there was sometimes there wasn't enough joint up thinking, as I said, which you see nowadays is a fantastic balance that they have. And you see that with the success of Ireland and the players in the way they are given that time to be physically at the top of their game and mentally as well. Because as we see with after a Leinster and so many Irish players involved, it's so difficult mentally to stay at the top of your game.
Correct, yeah.
You're too burnout. And people say, is that an intent? It isn't. You just can't. People can try and do it. You can see it in every sport, no matter what a competitor you are. And sometimes I think like Andy Farrell knows how to do it with a little leave you out of this team or squad. And that generally gets a bit of a reaction. So, I think it's fantastic the way they're managing it now, both physically and mentally.
And we understand recovery a lot better, and scientifically, you need that time mentally and physically, as you say.
Yeah, and the other thing is you get a couple of weeks off. You can do some really heavy training within the season. We had about a 3-week window before you're back in playing games. And then after that, you couldn't really do that much hard work. So we had about a 3 to 4 week, pre-season. And then that was it. Where nowadays you've got all these little blocks that you can go away, and they're all like mini pre-seasons. So you can be physically at another level where you had to keep yourself fresh for games and couldn't be burning yourself out. You're recovering. Then one day you could have a semi-hard day, and then you're preparing for the next game, so you couldn't be going too hard. So yeah, and everyone wants their piece of you, whether it be the national team, the club team, or at that stage as well, Leinster would have been there as well with Europe.
And playing for Ireland was still consistent. Did you suffer from playing in the UK in the Premiership in terms of availability for Ireland? Or was that a myth that people said at the time, be out of mind, out of sight, out of mind?
It was unofficial, but they certainly made a call after the 99 World Cup. I think it was after we had a big loss to England, that if you were overseas, you weren't going to be picked, which was quite unfair with players who were already under contract. To do that retrospectively, they should have left you play out once you made a commitment to come back. I could see why they would have done that. When I negotiated to come back to Leinster, I remember saying, look, I know if it's 60-40, you'll pick the Irish-based guy. And I was told 90-10, Wally. But that wasn't on the record. But that's
no, I know there's always a sense, though. Sometimes we militate against you, but weren't sure we were imagining as punters,
There was a little bit of politics as well, as there always was. When I first started out, go to Cork for your captain. Then it was maybe Shannon or Gary O might carry it all. The Munster team seemed to have a good control on it, and I think even with Munster, Leinster, they were pushing for their own players. Which, it probably stood for Irish rugby quite well, but I thought it was fairly unfairly enforced that all the international players that are trying to better themselves by playing at a higher level league, as it was back then in the UK or in England, were suddenly just, jettisoned out, which was, look, in the long run, it suited Irish rugby, but I think even in that medium short term, it would have been better to integrate, keep the players involved and just say, right, you got to come back. It would have had a much stronger depth of players and maybe would have had a bit more success, even though in that sort of O'Driscoll era, there was great success. But unfortunately, I was just retiring. I broke my leg just as Brian was breaking onto the scene. And not just him, but that Leinster backline and the Munster forwards coming through. But I think if we had stronger depth, and I know most of the English-based players came back, but there was a year or two where they were left out in the cold, which I thought was not to the betterment of Irish rugby.
Yeah. And is Irishness important to you? Being Irish and living in England or travelling, is that something you carry as a badge? Is it important or not?
Yeah, hugely. One, I suppose, as an Irish player and as an ambassador for Ireland from, way back, you won a school's triple crown, that early age, what that meant to me, especially in Oxford and Iffley Road against a very strong English team with Kieran Bracken, Mark Regan, I think Shaw and Delalio on the bench, was a pretty strong set. And from that, just touring, whether it was, Student World Cup in Italy or toured Africa with Irish development team, you always just felt you were an ambassador for the Irish team, and especially when you got to the senior level.
Yeah. And
it was always we might have had the most success, but we were definitely the most fun national team. And wherever we went, we were very liked. So I think we generally got a lot of the locals on our side, as opposed to some other teams that might be touring, and especially down in South Africa or Australia, New Zealand. But even post rugby, I've been lucky to do a lot of after dinner speaking in Asia and America, further afield, Australia, New Zealand. And you always feel, it's great. People just always want to, we've got such a strong diaspora, but also I think other people, neutrals there, always seem to enjoy, and you can get a bit of a free ride being Irish around the world, to be honest. There's, people are on your side before they even meet you, which is great. And there's a reason behind that. I think it's a lot of the great things, and, the Irish people have been very, the empathy, that I think the humour and general understanding of other people's cultures, I think, are very indicative of the Irish people. And, I think that's really stood for us for a long time.
Yeah, I lived in London mid-80s. It was slightly different then. There was a bit of but I love the place. But you were always more self-conscious than you would have been living in Boston, for example, where I was for 10 years. And Irishness carries itself differently in different places, and you just have to be kind of self-conscious about it sometimes.
Yeah. And, in London, it was called Paddy, like a lot of people just call you Paddy. And it was, I don't think it was even meant to be derogatory.
No, I don't think it really is. You can't, I never take offence to that.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of teammates for the catchment area from Essex.
Yeah.
And they would always go on, mate, say 33 the crowd. Not realising they could pronounce it themselves.
Yeah.
But, you'd have a good laugh at that. And you know what? Everyone had a good, good slag off each other, good sense of humour. You never took it too seriously. You'd always know, some of my best friends now are English players that I would have played with, over the years at Saracens as well. And, just brilliantly genuine people who'd always have your back.
Well, we claimed Kieran Bracken anyway, so even though he did. And setbacks, Paul, I know you've had your series of injuries over the years and actually ended your career in a way. How did you deal with them, and where did you get the resilience to battle through them?
I was pretty lucky with injuries, considering the amount of mileage I was going through. Tended to get away until when I was 29, I had a really bad break of my ankle on a frozen pitch in Ravenhill up in Belfast for Saracens against Ulster. And yeah, that put me back. I was out for about a year, and because of that came back to Leinster because there was, to be better looked after, fewer games, etc. And also at that stage, it had been pointed out to me, if you want to play for Ireland again, you want to be back in Ireland. So even though I was probably only half the player when I came back, I was straight into the squad again, which just showed the,
if you're available, you're in.
Yeah, where I was playing my best rugby before I broke my ankle and I couldn't get in the squad, like best by a long mile, better than my lines form, better than anything, and I was just being ignored because I was with Saracens. But with a broken leg, I was never quite the same player again, and then eventually that sort of broke out. But it taught me a lot. As a player, over in Saracens those years, a lot of players who had a lot of injury problems, who were out for 6, 8 months, they're just in there in the gym training on their own. And it's a bit like, I guess, if you're in the military and you don't want to think about the people that are hurt, you just got to think the positive stuff that you never get hurt. And you have this mindset. But coming back from that injury and the amount of time, it was myself and Brezzy, actually, who was on a Leinster contract as well, obviously went on to music and everything else. But the two of us stuck in the gym for about 6 months, just doing our own rehab and that. And what I had to do just to get on the training pitch every day and recovery afterwards, just so I could get on the training pitch. It's the hardest I've ever worked. And when I got back playing, we won the Celtic League final. I got back for about the quarterfinal stage and went on and won that and got back and had a few games for Ireland off the bench, even though I thought I wasn't quite right. But to work to get to that level again was probably the proudest achievement, personally, that I've had. Not winning anything, but just the work and effort that went in to get me to that stage. And even though I couldn't play anywhere near my best, that was huge for me. Like, I was doing a cycling event there recently, and we're in the middle of the night with Rob Wainwright and Martin Johnson, and we're up in the Welsh mountains. And all of a sudden, one of the guys said, just as it was about -2, -3, and this is on the Doddy cycle. And one of the guys behind me threw and says, your brake's rubbing. I said, that's not grand. Anyhow, bang, bang, just started dropping. And I was going to get off, and then I realized, geez, there's no one behind me. I'm in the middle of the Welsh mountains on my own. And I said, well, I'll do a car, something will come along, or I'll go back down the hill to where we came from. And then I just said, look, whatever you do, get to the top of the mountain and then you can give up. And it was sort of an analogy. So there I headed off with the brake rubbing up the mountain and got up there to the top. And next thing you see, the van is pulled in waiting. So went there, they fixed the brake and caught up and got back in it and was able to finish the whole thing. But I guess it was a bit like that with the injury. I just went, just things it down, get to the best you can be, and then you can be happy when you finish. Now, as it happened, it was the surgeon told me, that's it, you can't. I literally couldn't put any weight on it anymore. So that was that. I was very proud of the way that, I pushed myself. I suppose, would have expected to have 5-6 years if I hadn't broken my ankle more in my career. So it was probably mid-career. Yeah, and there was a Lions tour coming up in 2001 in Australia, which I really wanted to get on. I'd had such a wonderful time from a rugby and a social sense with the guys in '97. So that was just quite heartbreaking at that time. But to fight back and get there and, wear the Irish jersey again was just...
Where'd you go mentally to keep yourself? You make it sound mechanical in a way. You just go and train every day, 6 months. But there's some days you just don't feel you have it. So where do you dig to get that energy or drive to do it? Is it just automatic or?
There's pride. There was because of what had happened, where I felt I should far and away the best player in my position at the time in Ireland. Yeah. And I was playing my best rugby and I wasn't getting a shot. There was a real anger. And I guess I was harnessing that anger to get myself back. It was proving a point, and I guess being quite a stubborn person, that was probably what you get. And you need to have that stubbornness, I think. And you can have your anger, it's how you harness it.
Yeah, exactly.
Get it to be, and just saying, right, well, I'm going to do everything I can. And I'd realised then, in this whole recovery phase, how easy I'd had it when I wasn't being injured. But when you're injured, trying to get back, it's, and my empathy now for players with long injuries, it's just went through the roof from that day when you go through that process. It was, the guys used to laugh at me. I remember when my first training session back, I managed to run a short line. It was just, and I was running through, and a great friend of mine who played all the way up from schools at Liam Toland. And next thing he jumps out of the way and he goes, Liam, why didn't you tackle him? And Toland just says, I can't tackle a cripple. I laughed so hard. I didn't have the flex and dropped the ball over the line. I was laughing so hard, you know. But yeah, that was it. But what can you do? You can do the best you can. You can redefine what the best you can do is. Try and raise yourself to that level. And if you can't, then you can, you know, finish with your head up high.
Yeah, we touched upon you know, channel that frustration, negative energy potentially in the right way to do something for you in the good side rather than the bad side, isn't it?
Yeah, and you'll always have a little bit of a come down period when you get bad news and, you know, work, anything, family, there's always little things that happen. But, you know, I suppose my mindset is I might go into myself for a day or two and be a little bit depressed or whatever, very angry about it. And then I just get this sort of anger and then just try and really push that on and say, right, okay, stop feeling sorry for yourself. Try and remember some of Jim Telfer from the Lines tour, some of his lines, his like, stop feeling sorry for yourself. You know, there's two types of people in the world. Those that feel sorry for themselves and then who just get up and sort it out. And make sure you can feel a bit sorry for yourself, but you just got to get right back out and come back twice as hard then. And to make sure you get there. Just what you think your best is, you got to go and better that again and make sure.
And describe to me being in that room when Jim gives those famous speeches that we now watch in 97 or whatever, of digging that deep. Is it that intense and scary, motivating, listening to him speak?
Yeah. Do you know what? Well, the nerves and that, and most of those were before test matches. And can I add, Ian McGeechan was just as inspirational, but there's something about Jim Telfer's voice, his character, that just absolutely inspires. You know, even in training sessions, he would do things. Our kickoffs were too slow. And we said, we're sprinting flat. But he would make ways where we start back an extra 5 meters and and you'd get there. And he'd always manage to get, you think you're 100%, you're only doing about 90. He'll get you at least to 95. And it was always that way. And it was a mental hardness, just don't feel sorry for yourself attitude. In Scotland, I guess when you had Jim every session, some of the forwards weren't the biggest fans of coming in time and time again to this. But in a one-off occasion, whether it be Johnson, you know, Delalio, especially the forwards, I think, you know, Woody, myself, Hilly, Jeremy Davis, we were all absolutely enthralled for him to just push and push and push. But I think because as a team, it was like he was one of the players with us on the pitch. And of course, he had great leadership of Martin Johnson as well, who was a man of fewer words. But when he spoke, everyone listened. Even a look from Jono could tell you would be more than, you know, some players like to talk a lot, some captains, leaders. Jono's a man of few words, but I would say...
Hey, Yetis, this is Nick and Jack from the Best One Yet podcast. Now, the last company we worked at, they used Paylocity and everything just worked. It wasn't until launching our own media business, this show, that we realized how rare that is.
Because Paylocity is one delicious burrito of operational needs. They roll up HR, finance, and IT seamlessly into one delicious bite.
When everything wraps together like that all at once, your workforce, your tech stack, your business, you don't need more tools. You don't even need cilantro.
You need one solution.
And that is why Paylocity built a single platform to connect HR, finance, and IT with AI-driven insights and automated workflows that simplify the complex and power what's next.
Or as we call it, a delicious operational burrito.
Yes, we do. Experience a one place for all your HCM needs, besties.
So start now at Paylocity.com/one.
Paylocity.com/ONE.
Ever notice how life's best stories don't happen in your living room? They happen on the open road, out on the water, or parked under the stars. At Progressive, they get that you want to focus on the experience, not worry about the what-ifs. That's why they offer quality insurance designed for your ride, whether that's a boat, RV, or motorcycle. Adventure with confidence. Visit Progressive.com and see how easy it is to protect your favorite way to get away. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in D.C. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Much more influential than the others.
Yeah. And that sliding doors moment when you didn't think you were going to make it to South Africa and you passed your opponent in Heathrow and ended up playing 3 tests. Do you find that remarkable looking back?
Yeah, look, I was, again, you talk about disappointment. I felt I was playing very well in Saracens at the time. In Ireland, we played against Scotland in the last game of the Six Nations, lost that match, and we would have been expected to dominate up front. I was up against Tommy Smith, the late Tommy Smith, who became a great friend of mine and played in the Lions team with me. As I like to say it, I didn't lose my spot on the Lions tour. I got Tommy his spot on the Lions tour, but he's like a little tent peg. The more you pushed him, the more you'd like pushing him into the ground. So he wasn't the most aggressive guy to go at you, but to get dominance was very difficult. And then he was such a great player around the park. And yeah, that disappointment and not getting selected, I suppose, was again a benefit to me, because I came not thinking I'd have a chance, because you had Di Young who had played in the Australian Test Series 8 years before. Jason Leonard had played 4 years before at tighthead. So I was thinking I'd be lucky to get a few games, and it was just about give everything and just show that you should have been on the tour. But to break into the test team, I always felt I was good enough, but I didn't think I'd ever get the opportunity to actually make a good run at it. And of course, passing Claw, who didn't pass the show, was, yeah, we had a ding dong every time we played at each other. You know, I was the young pretender coming through at Munster, and then it was Munster, Leinster, or Saracens, and that. So we had a good ding dong. It was very competitive. Like Claw was never quite like the young fella coming. He doesn't arm around and try and bring you through. He's going, I'm fighting you tooth and nail for this spot. And God, we had some sparks around the pitch over the years.
Yeah, but you got in there and you met that lovely man, Os Durant.
Yeah, big Oz, yeah. And yeah, funnily enough, I got carried away with myself. I was going quite well in the midweek team. We were out scrummaging all the competition. And I was going, now I've got the big English, back five, along with Jeremy Davidson. It was Rod Burr, Delalio Hill, Johnson, Jeremy. That's a lot of weight in there, a lot of physical size. Not countenancing that the Springbok back five were even bigger. I was up against Saracens. Went too high, tried to power scrummage. One penalty against us, which I take the scrum height was my fault. Next one, another penalty. They're 3-0 up. I'm under the post. It mentioned Martin Johnson. He just gave me one look. It was this frown and the way, the look he can give you. Yeah. And I went, right, cop on. You've been too arrogant trying to power scrummage against this giant Oz. Oz means ox in Afrikaans. And to be called that in the high veld, to be nicknamed Oz is just says that, they're huge men at the best of times. But yeah, and a wonderful guy. But from then on, once I, scrummaging is about, it's a form of wrestling, and they're trying to take that out of the game. And it's about technique and getting a guy into a bad position and then exerting your power and strength, as opposed to just trying to do it the other way around. So that, and unfortunately, it's this skill and talent that's been taken out of the game, I think, in the Northern Hemisphere, mainly due to interpretation of the laws from the Southern Hemisphere, who never had that ability over the years. By doing that and just sticking what you're good at and not getting carried away with yourself, then we pretty much dominated the scrum from there on in. And, we got all the scrum angles that we needed, including Matt Dawson's famous try in the first test, which was probably the game breaker, so it was, yeah. And back then, you played 80 minutes and a big man, you could wear him down. There was a lot more scrums than there are these days. So if you just kept working and working and working at the big giant, you could eventually wear them down, as I was David to the Goliath, as it were. But yeah, it was great. A wonderful guy. And one thing I'd say about the Springboks, used to always have a bit of a bad reputation because of the Afrikaners post-apartheid and that. But sportsmanship, they were always fantastic in changing a jersey or meeting after a game. And even though there was a huge rivalry, especially the following year when they toured with Ireland in '98, where there was the Battle of Pretoria and that, which was quite famous, they were always great guys. And I must say, and great sportsmen and just very, very physical. And funnily enough, where we thought we were the opposite to the South Africans, I work with a lot of South Africans now, and we're actually very, very similar, I believe.
And there was no of those 99 call moments. It was all fairly friendly compared to the old days on the highway.
No, there was quite a few. Well, we had Andre Venter, who was probably the best athlete. He's probably still one of the best athletes to have played the game. At number 6, he plays sevens. He was about 6'4", 5. He was really fast, but incredibly big and powerful. And all he wanted to do was fight all day. So we said it's better he's doing that than running over Jerry Guscott in 13 channels. So we kept him busy in the tight exchanges.
Yeah. And that was, would you say that was one of your iconic moments, your good moments you look back on of the touring party, the good moments of the panel and the team? The high moments of your career?
It is, until coming back from my injury. Like, I always swore, I said this, I was in the back of the bus coming out of Kings Park with Jerry Guscott, and I turned to Jerry, who'd always also won a series in Australia. And I said, Jesus, is this better than Australia? And he goes, that they're all different occasions, you can't compare them. And I said, right, I was 25. I said, this is not going to be the top of my career. I'm just far too early. And I remember saying to me, this is just the start. It's going to be better. I'm going to move on to the next level. And, one of my biggest regrets is we lost the third test. Now a lot of guys had injuries and cried off, but that was certainly an opportunity. We certainly did a lot of partying as well up in Vanderbilt Park in the middle of nowhere for a few days. But yeah, we probably played our best rugby as well in that third test, but just things didn't come off, and then they'd go to length of the pitch and score. But we certainly played some great rugby, which we only did in fits and bursts in the first two tests.
Okay, and around Christmas table, of the three Wallace brothers who played for the Lions, who is the greatest, inverted commas, according to themselves, when you're meeting?
Well, I'm the only one that won a series, so David with his Grand Slams and Richie with his Triple Crowns, they can
Mickey Mouse
take that, and yeah.
That's beats them all.
Yeah. No, look, David in particular had so much success with Ireland, and he's had 2 Lions tours and just been put on the Lions board as well, which is...
Yeah, I saw that this week, yeah.
Yeah, and he played in that series, which, like, one of the best games I've ever been to was in Loch Versfeld in Pretoria, that second test, which unfortunately we lost. When Brian O'Driscoll and Adam Jones had that head injury, I think we could have won the series, and series they're so tight when you're playing the likes of New Zealand and South Africa in particular away, that even no matter how well you play, you need a bit of good fortune as well.
Yeah.
And, we probably got a bit with Honeyball missing a few kicks, but we also, it was swings and roundabouts, and you create your own luck as well. And at the end of the day, it's that's the result. You win or you lose, and you just got to accept it and move on.
And in real life, how a sport is predictable, inverted commas, and life, how do you adapt to life after sport, trying to make your own way in business or whatever? Good, bad and different. Do you find that a very different world to walk in than sport?
Yeah, there's a big change, and I'm probably a bit luckier than some of the others in that I had, finished university. I'd started working before I went professional, so coming back was probably not as tough walking into an office job. The confidence is a big thing, because you've been out of the loop for, at one stage I found it, I'd start writing something and my spelling and everything had gone, because when you're playing rugby all day, you're not writing.
Yeah.
You're not typing.
Yeah.
We were in London without mobile phones. Internet was only just broken in the latter years. So it was funny. You weren't writing letters home or anything. It was just all on the phone. And I found things like that in my skill set, and then confidence to go with it. And I think there's an issue as well, and I've seen it when I've chatted with a lot of players who've retired. You really want to prove yourself. There's a lot of smart guys, but then try and overprove themselves, where, to be honest, you're starting off again and you're there to learn. But people want to try and prove themselves by jumping in and maybe jump in too far, rather than getting in and having someone that they can learn from and go to the next levels. Take it as a phase thing, a transition couple of years. It's the competitive spirit as well. And, when you've been, people coming looking for your autograph for 10 years, and all of a sudden you're being dictated to, as I would say to some of the guys, you've got a boss there, you got a couple of bosses, right? But that's, you're in a rugby club, you got different coaches, you've got the CEO, they're your bosses as well. It's just the way you're treated, whatever the culture of the organisation. So yes, it was very difficult initially coming back. And then obviously the whole Celtic Tiger imploding as well was not great.
Yeah.
But then, you learn from it, you move on. And I would say by going through those tough times post-rugby has helped me immensely in my career now. And and my ability...
Did you know that passive fixed income ETFs only capture about 50% of the U.S. public bond market? But with JP Morgan Asset Management's active fixed income ETFs, we can help you capture 100% of the U.S. public bond market and explore twice as many opportunities. Visit jpmorgan.com/getactive to learn more. JP Morgan Asset Management is the brand name for the asset management business of JP Morgan Chase & Company and its affiliates worldwide. This communication is issued by JP Morgan Distribution Services Incorporated, member of FINRA.
You've got social dialed in. Search is doing its thing. So why do your marketing results look the same as 6 months ago? That's because you're fishing in the same pond as everyone else. Podcast listeners are a different audience entirely. More engaged, harder to reach through traditional channels, and ready to act when someone they trust makes a recommendation. We're Acast, and we put them right in front of you. Browse thousands of the world's leading podcasts, book host reads or run your own ads, and track every conversion in real time. Same skills you already have, brand new results. Acast. Acast.com/advertise.
To bounce back from knocks has greatly increased, Jeff.
Yeah, well, time teaches you that. When did you come back? In 2001, 2002, something?
Yeah, 2003, I retired and I went to work for Jones Lang LaSalle in commercial property. So we were investing for property syndicates and private banks and individuals into mainly around Europe. And thankfully, a lot of what we did was in Germany, and those clients all managed to come through the Tiger one way, pretty much, not too badly affected. And it was a whole divestment strategy for companies that.
And how do you keep your mojo going into this new phase of new way of doing things? You weren't on a playing field where you physically thought you could control it. Mentally, did you find that tough to keep motivating yourself?
Yeah. You certainly did. And you probably didn't have the confidence, exude confidence, probably more so, where you're trying to push someone to do something because you know what's right. And you say, this guy's been in the business for 30 years, you're 2-3 years in. But you might have done the research on something and say, yeah, you should go to this. But yeah, and that's like...
Was it intimidating though?
Yeah, a little bit it was, yeah.
Yeah. Because most sports people have a difficulty in stepping into what we know as real life. I've done with soccer players, I've seen other sports people. It's very different. To us, granted, these things happen, but for sports people, I think it's more challenging in reading people, understanding situations, as you say, not being used to do basic office things. You do feel intimidated, or that other people know more than you do.
Yeah, when you've been out of it for so long and then back into it, and getting that experience and moving on. And then obviously you hit the Celtic Tiger years and I moved on into the debt side, which is probably with an economics background is where I had wanted to be. But then there was just no comeback. The Irish market was just so dead for such a long time. And and thankfully over the last few years created a VAT review data analytics business, and that's going fantastic in that it's one of those niche industries where you've got no competition and it's a no fine, no fee basis. So we've been very successful over the last 2 years. And I guess I wasn't a natural salesperson, but when you know something is that good and there's no real competition to what we're doing, then it's very easy to become a good salesman when you've got real belief in what you're selling. Yeah.
Just don't talk too much about it because people might listen and do the same.
Yeah. Well, there's 20 years of data analytics to get through, so
you're safe.
We've got a little bit of a bit of time.
And there's music.
I'll be retired in 20 years.
I'll go away at that. And does music float your boat, Paul?
Yes, but a bit of everything. I
suppose in your day you didn't go to test matches with big headphones on, listen to music down the tunnel. It was different then.
Yeah, I remember before the World Cup in '99, Warren Gatland decided we're going to have you put a song on a little MP3 player for each one of you, right? And we're going to do it, right? And we'll all give them one. And mine was something like, what's the name of the band? It was like Take Your Head Off. It'll come back to me, Eddie. I was just really upbeat tempo, and all the forwards, it would be like either heavy metal. It was just something like, grunge or something like that. And then it came to Davy Humphreys, and you overheard him. He had Celine Dion from Titanic. And we're saying the difference between forwards and backs. It's just relaxing, calming music, and ours was
thump, thump, thump.
manic. I suppose AC/DC I should have probably gone for as well, but I suppose the Jam when I was growing up, big fan. My older brother Henry was into them and into that. My brother Richard was ska, so it was a bit of Madness, Bad Manners, Specials, and that. So but anything from Van Morrison to Queen to I'm very varied. There's some modern music as well, but to be honest, I probably 80s, 90s is still where I'm at. And every time they come back, like I was at the Payton Road recently, and I'm just going, they weren't even one of my top bands. They're better than anything that's out there at the moment. And I'm sure I'm sounding like my dad would have when I was my kid's age.
Yeah, wait till your kids start slagging your music.
Yeah. But I like Nina Simone. I go back as far as there, and I would listen to a lot of modern music as well, especially with my 8-year-old daughter really getting into whatever it might be. So I suppose I'm fairly open mind, and I wouldn't classify myself as with any particular genre, but I certainly have probably time and mood that I would change to what I listen to. But if you're to say anyone that I'd love to see, it would be Paul Weller back with the Jam, not coming here on his own.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed for that. And is there any poems or words of wisdom, apart from what you learned from Jim Telfer, that you would run to as a quote that motivates you? Or is Jim Telfer's climb to Everest the place where it's at?
Yeah, well, there's another Henry Ford one, a good Cork man. A scatterbrain is one who never has an unspoken thought. I'm a bit of a scatterbrain. Sometimes I don't take the time to think and just blurt it out. I saw it once in an Irish Times article where it was as a slight on someone, just a quote about the person who said, never an unspoken thought. And it's a wonderful put down. But it's probably one that I got to learn myself. Probably never will. It's not in my persona, but it is a good one. There's a lot of things that I wish I thought a bit more about before I actually spoke.
Don't we all? And finally, when you look back on your career, life and business, are you surprised at how it worked out, how successful you were? Or was it a given in your mind that you'd get to where you are now?
I remember being a student in UCC and saying, I'm going to play for Ireland in about 3 years' time, which I went ahead and did. I always had this focus to do that. I suppose in business life, I had that. It was greatly interrupted with the sport, but would I ever exchange it? Definitely not. No. There's sort of regrets that I couldn't do both. I think back of a lot of people who went into investment banking when you're an international rugby player, so it helps you along in that level in your business, and you can jump straight back into it. But when you take that time out for 8-10 years and then try and go back and start building, you never quite get there. But, slowly but surely getting there. And, I guess success is all about the real reward from it is what you've put into it to get yourself there. And I think that's something, you go back talking about Telfer, is if you put everything in, even if it's a loss, but a great performance, well, that's success as well. So you want to get the win, but the thing is getting the best out of yourself and getting yourself, and always knowing that you can get more out of yourself and you can be better, and never really relaxing on what you think is optimal performance, and just pushing about. In sport, it would have been, I changed my diet, which was a big thing. Went on the zone diet, which improved things greatly. Changed the way I was training, sleep habits, all these little things, just to get that little bit more. I guess it's the same with, I suppose, disciplines in working life as well, and family life as well, and in what you're going to do, getting to bed earlier, so you're up earlier with your children before you get to work and things like that. So there are a lot of things, but I suppose it's just you always have to be trying to improve yourself one way or another, and especially by doing things that you don't really want to do.
Paul Wallace, thank you very much for joining us today on Aran Island Discs.
My pleasure, Ross. It's been great chatting.
Before we had AT&T Business Wireless coverage, our delivery GPS wasn't the most reliable. Once our driver had to do a 14-point turn to get back on route. A 14-point turn! An influencer even live streamed the whole thing. Not good for business. Now with AT&T Business Wireless, routes are updating on the fly and deliveries are on time. And the influencer did get us 53 new followers, though.
AT&T Business Wireless. Connecting changes everything.
Support for this podcast comes from Progressive, America's #1 motorcycle insurer. Did you know riders who switch and save with Progressive save nearly $200 per year? That's a whole new pair of riding gloves, and more. Quote today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $197 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between October 2024 and September 2025. Potential savings will vary.
While every other channel is fighting for your customers' attention, podcasts are where they've already given it. No one accidentally listens to a podcast for 45 minutes. They choose to be here. They trust the voice in their ears, and when that voice talks about your brand, it doesn't sound like advertising. It sounds like a recommendation from a friend. Acast gives you that trust at scale. Digital precision, host-read authenticity, and performance data that proves it worked. Don't fight for attention. Buy it with Acast. Learn more by visiting acast.com/advertise.